Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, and we are super excited for today's guest. This summer we've been super busy. We've had, our Hot Fudge Sunday contest just wrapped up. Our Mass Pirates coverage, our Boston Glory coverage, and we are now getting into our football fall season. And we're going to have a consistency of guests on here all fall long. So we're really excited for our guest who's going to be kicking it kind of off of our consistency for the fall season for us. But I've heard about this guy now for a couple of months, and I'm glad that we were able to make this work. He's got a super busy schedule, but also a local standout guy. Whenever we get a Massachusetts guy on here, someone who is pursuing something and passion, and it's cool. It's cool to be able to tell the story and talk about it. So today's guest, I've been told, is the next Sam Hunt of country music. I've heard that reference a lot, but a country singer, also a former athlete, a former quarterback at the University of Auburn. SEC, especially in that time period, 2015, that's the best football. That's the best football being played in college in the country. So definitely played against the best of the best, but also a standout local high school athlete at Tyngsboro High School as well. So giving our shout out and our love to Massachusetts and our high school sports that we cover. So without further ado, the guy who I've been introducing here all along, Ben Durand.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Anthony. Quite the introduction. I'm blushing.
Well, intros are huge. I'm a big wrestling guy, and to me, there's nothing that gets me hyped up more than an unbelievable entrance or really cool promo. And so I try to make my guests feel as though the red carpet's rolled out for them.
You're Massachusetts Bruce Buffer. You're our guy.
I'll take that. Listen, I will take that. I'll be one of 50. I'll be one of 50.
Absolutely.
As I said, we're really lucky to have you on here today. And I feel like we're just going to talk about a lot of different stuff. Our audience is a huge range, 18 to 42. I say this on the podcast a lot. It is a third, a third, a third across the board in those categories. So we
Great.
definitely have a wide range of audience. And I think the stuff that we could talk about today is just endless, but something I think they'll enjoy. So I'm going to start out a little bit with the sports stuff first,
Sure.
just because that's our thing. But Tyngsboro High School, now, before we jump into athletics there, off air, we were just talking a little bit about our Hot Fudge Sunday contest that we had, best Hot Fudge Sunday in Massachusetts. And your hometown, Sullivan's Farm, took it down. They took down the championship. I did not know this literally until I started really doing my research on you. So when I saw that, it just was like, oh, very cool, a small world. But Sullivan's Farm, were you a big, you go there a lot? You love their ice cream? Is that the spot of spots in town?
I think that might be the least surprising winner I've ever heard of for a hot fudge Sunday contest. I mean, Sullivan Farms, from the time I moved to town back in the third grade or whatnot, that has been the spot after every soccer game, football game, baseball, basketball. That is like, Mom, can we stop at Sullivan's on the way home? That's always been the spot. So definitely a little hometown pride there. The fact that we took down that number one spot.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we called our method the Mohawking method. Like, we obviously couldn't eat all the Sundays because we would have been dead by the third one. So we just Mohawked the sides. Like, we made sure we got the fudge, the ice cream, the whipped cream all on there. And Sullivan's, I felt like I couldn't stop eating it. Like, I was like, this is the first ice cream I gotta stop.
I'm not surprised. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. And I don't know if I believe that because I saw an eating video with you. The Chellies, was that it? Or
Oh, the Cheenies
Teenies.
contest? Yeah.
Teenies contest. I was gonna pick your brain about that a little bit because back in college, I actually had a show on campus before I started doing sports. I was a broadcaster, and we had this show called Binge Eating. And I used to go around campus and do all the eating competitions around the school, and we'd air it on Eagle Eye Television. So if you need a buddy to come to any of these eating things with, I'm your guy. I'd be happy to do it. It's been a long time, but
How popular was that on campus?
everyone, honestly, Eagle Eye Television, not the most watched. If you put like ESPN here, Eagle Eye
Right.
was definitely
But what
here.
you guys did must have been kind of cool.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was actually my co-host for that was this girl by the name of Brooke Fletcher, who is now I think the lead anchor for CBS Chicago.
Oh,
So
wow.
she continued on that route and she's killing it. But she was we always had a ton of fun. We did like a parkour skit one time. It was really fun.
That's good. I mean, I got involved in this stuff like later on in life. Like one of my biggest regrets is I just didn't like give myself the time to learn like technology and learn how to edit and learn how like if I wish I knew what I knew now like 10 years ago with this stuff. But it is cool like to hear that and to see that. But yeah, I wanted to give Tyngsboro a little love there. I wanted to kind of show it off, and I'm sure like it was a popular spot in town when
We
you were
appreciate
younger.
it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So one thing I'll ask you, obviously, we mentioned that you played at the University of Auburn. That's big decision making for you. That's big time football. You're, well-rounded athlete. I saw that you played multiple sports. I think you even lettered in tennis your senior year, if I thought I read that correctly.
I did.
Yeah, so you played everything, man. You did everything. But decision making, I mean, a lot of young kids that we have on here, when it comes to making decisions, we kind of hear different advice and different ways they went about getting to where they chose. For you, maybe talk about that process a little bit in Auburn, obviously with their other offers, things like that, and kind of what maybe made your decision for you.
Yeah. So, when I was coming out of high school, I was super undersized. So, I was really tall, I was really lanky, didn't spend as much time in the weight room as I probably should have. Um, I think I had a God-gifted arm talent though.
Right.
All my coaches always said, they're like, "Ben, you put that arm on a different frame, you're probably getting recruited everywhere around here." But for the most part, it was D3, D2 schools that were reaching out. And I kind of came to a point in time where I had to make a decision. Was I going to go to college and try and play at the best football school that I could play at? Or was I going to go to college and try to have the best college experience that I could possibly have? And for me, my dream was to go down south. So I really wanted to have that big school spirit. Like if I wasn't going to play college athletics, I wanted to go to the top of where college athletics was happening. So that was my decision coming out. And honestly, even going to Auburn was a little bit of a miracle because I didn't get in the first time when I applied. They rejected me. So I went
Mhm.
to Clemson, Georgia, Auburn, and I even applied to UT, Texas, because my cousin went there.
Yeah.
Got denied by every single school except for Auburn, who accepted me at their Auburn at Montgomery campus. And I had this guidance counselor, Jamie Phipps, shout out. She said to me, she's like, Ben, you were so close. You should write an appeal letter to admissions. And I don't know if any high school students know this, but if they don't, I hope that they all hear this because it changed my life in a huge way. I wrote a letter and I told them all the reasons why they should reconsider me. I'm going to be the hardest working guy on their campus. I'm going to get involved on campus, you name it. And they accepted me off of that. They took me in at Auburn, and I would have never even had the opportunity to walk on had I not done that. So I always shout that out to kids like no might mean no, but there might still be a crack. And I think it's always worth just going the extra mile if you love a school.
I mean, that's amazing. That's an incredible story, actually, because I mean, here you are applying to other schools, not getting in. I mean, for you mentally alone, that's a very difficult thing of like, what is my next chapter? What am I doing? And you go from that to be able to appeal and sell you. And maybe that's the story of your life a little bit and where it's come and where you are right now of being able to sell who you are as a person a little bit, which is quite amazing. Being a walk-on, I mean, maybe there's a theme here that I'm trying to catch, and maybe we'll figure out as we're talking.
Sure.
Talk about that because you're not guaranteed a spot. You're not a scholarship athlete who's getting treated a type of way. You are probably not looked at totem pole wise. Hard work, attitude, consistency is what you need to excel. And I'm guessing more than most and more than everybody. I mean, talk about that experience. It's just interesting to me. I'm really curious.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, the walk-on experience I think was one of the most life-changing experiences that I've had as as a man, honestly. I even have that as like my mantra, like the walk-on mentality. Um, it's when I like think of the walk-on mentality, I'm always like, all right, well, you're a dreamer. Like you dreamed about this happening. I went to an open tryout, just like Rudy, like I went to the open tryout, 100 kids there. Coach comes out and he's like, "Hey, want you all to know we need top effort because we don't need any of you guys. We're Auburn University. We can recruit from anywhere in the freaking country. So like no walking, no being lazy here. Like give us everything you got. And if you're fortunate enough, work your butt off to stay on the team." Um, so like the whole walk-on mentality, like even when I walked on that winter, because I walked on in the winter and then it went into the spring, I was just fighting every day to stay on the team. And I was like, how the heck am I going to do this? Like I got on the team. I was the weakest dude by a mile. Like I was benching less than the kickers. I was just physically so out of shape compared to these guys, even with me working out that entire offseason to make the team. And literally, I just lived at the facility. Like
Yeah.
I was probably watching as much film as our starting quarterback at the time, just trying to make like the sixth quarterback spot. Um, it was kind of ridiculous to be honest. And
Yeah.
at the end of the spring, I'll never forget it. We had Coach Lashley at the time. He's now the head coach of Dallas Mustangs. And I went into his office for the exit interview and he was like, "Hey Ben, like great job this spring. Like you really worked your butt off. Like really enjoyed having you around here." And I was like, "Thanks so much, coach. Like I appreciate it." He's like, "All right, yeah, so we'll be in touch this summer and just keep working hard and we'll talk to you soon." And I was like, "Did I just get cut?" Like
Right. Like, what does that mean?
I
Yeah.
had no idea. And
Right.
I'll never forget. I called my dad and he's like, "Hey son, what's the deal? Like, are you making the fall roster?" Because what they do in the spring, they're low on guys, right? Because you have a bunch of guys go to the NFL, guys graduate, and then
Mhm.
they need to rebuild. And then they cut a bunch of guys for the fall because they have all the incoming freshmen.
Okay.
I didn't get a decision one way or the other. And so it was like 2 or 3 days later, I had still heard nothing. And I'm walking into the facility because I still had access and everything. And Coach Lashley's walking in at the same time. And I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's like, "Good." He's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I gotta ask you something, coach. Like, am I cut? Like, I'm going home this week, and like, I don't know if I'm on the team or not." He's like, "Why didn't you think you were on the team?" I was like, "Uh, you didn't really tell me I was one where they actually ended up cutting a guy that they recruited to Auburn as a preferred walk on to keep me."
Wow.
Um, so I beat out that guy for that spot, and it was really just by being there and caring more than as much as anyone could care to be the backup to the backup to the backup quarterback.
Does that go unnoticed? Like, do you feel like your teammates notice that? Like the guy at the bottom of the depth chart, like in a program like that, I mean, how noticeable is that amongst your teammates?
It was very noticeable. Like, I think every walk on has their own crazy story of how it all happened. But I will say if you there's not a single guy on that team, and we had like 115 guys, 120 guys on our roster because it's college, right? So
Yeah.
they they have to have the numbers because you can't go out and recruit midseason. Um, there is not a single guy in that facility or on that team that doesn't know who the heck I am and wouldn't remember me from college football. Like I guarantee you, they would know exactly who I am um, from that team, like
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Wow. That's amazing. It's incredible.
I was our Brian Scalabrine. I was total locker room guy, like total locker room guy. But I also brought the energy to practice.
Well,
So
I mean, that's it. In all honesty, man, when I coached in high school, every year there was like two or three kids we just pinned as like energy guys that we didn't know necessarily what their role was at this point or whatever, but they came to practice, they brought it all the time. They were yelling and screaming, hooting and hollering, jumping around. I mean, you need that. That is like, if you don't have that in your program, that means there's something not exciting going on in your program for someone not to get that happy about. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
that's,
and I was like our scout team quarterback, so I was always trying to mirror the starting quarterbacks we were going against. So
yeah.
I'll never forget, like when I was Johnny Manziel in practice and I'm like wearing his jersey and running around the field. Every time I burnt the defense, I was just always like doing the funny thing, like just totally flexing them. I was like, just having fun with it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's so funny. I mean, talk about do you have any crazy stories? Like, do you have anybody in practice you dropped a dime on, like, and, like, celebrated like that? Any, like, someone who's picked you, like, ridiculously or hit you ever taken? Like, do you have your moment of someone and maybe who's in the NFL, like, anything like that?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I'd love for you to reach out to Jonathan Jones on the Patriots because me and Gray King used to work him in practice a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh,
Uh, Jonathan Jones though is like one of those guys from college. Like the amount that he has grown and the
yeah.
amount that he has matured and grown into his role in the NFL, like he's a top corner in the
Oh,
NFL now.
yeah?
I mean, he was a very, very good college cornerback. He
Yeah.
is took it to a whole other level in the NFL. Even like my buddy, one of my best friends is CJ Uzama, who has been a 10-year tight end in the NFL. Like you see
Yeah.
a lot of guys that go into the league and they're highly drafted and they don't make it through like year 2, 3, 4, right? They kind of fizzle out. He was another guy that just he got to the league, he just kept getting better and better. He was known as a pass catching tight end. Then he really learned how to block and he embraced that role. And
Yeah.
um, so I'd say a couple times, definitely had my moments with any of the cornerbacks on our teams for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and I also did kickoff and punt return drills. So that was when I kind of got to lay my body into guys. So I feel like the folks that I probably got the best licks on aren't anyone that any of you would know. So it's
Yeah.
not even worth saying.
That's funny. I mean, that's great. I mean, you played at a time too. I mean, I think in 2013 we maybe won the SEC championship, 2014, somewhere around that window as well.
Yeah,
So
I
talk
actually
about being part of that squad. I mean, SEC, listen, in that time period, the winner of the SEC was national champion, or the SEC championship game was national championship game for all intents and purposes. But winning the SEC is no joke. I mean, talk about that experience and being a part of all that.
that was the wildest season I think in college football
Right.
history. So we were the worst team in the SEC the year before.
Mhm.
We had Gene Chizik as our head coach. I walked on that spring, the same year that they changed coaching staffs. So that's actually a part of the story that I don't talk about very often was when I was going to try out for the team,
Mhm.
I had done all the paperwork and everything with the original coaching staff to even go to the open tryout. And I
Yeah.
was nervous that the new coaching staff was gonna be like, no, we're not doing this. Like, let's just start from scratch. But they actually honored the tryout that they had already kind of booked
Wow.
for the campus. So it was Gus Malzahn, new head coach. That year, we just kept winning and we kept stringing together wins and we lost early in the year. So, like,
Yeah.
remember we lost to LSU. There was one other team that beat us. We were a two-loss team that made it to the national championship, which almost never happens.
Right.
But the only reason it did is we kept beating top ranked teams over and over and over. And then it was the last two games of the year. We took out top ranked Georgia on the Hail Mary catch.
Yep.
They call it the prayer and Jordan Hare. And then we beat
Uh,
Bama on the kick six.
yeah. I mean that I've seen that play recently more. And I don't know if it's like the 10-year anniversary or something like that, but I've been hearing it more and seeing it more like on Instagram, on ESPN, like all the time. All the time.
Yeah, they actually, so we went down for the 10-year anniversary this past year. So I was at the Iron Bowl this year when they converted the 4th and 31.
Yeah, dude.
The two Iron Bowls. I've only like I mean, I've gone to the two greatest Iron Bowls in
Ever.
Auburn and Alabama history.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that season we just kind of kept winning, and then we won the SEC championship. And then I think we needed Michigan State to beat someone for us to go to the number 2 spot to play
Yeah.
Florida State. And honestly, that entire season was just jet fuel. Like
Yeah.
the campus was on fire, the student body was so fired up, my hometown was so fired up. Like I just walked on. The amount of text messages and love that I was getting from all my friends and family back home being like, dude, I can't believe you're a part of this ride right now. I was like,
It's
I
yeah.
can't freaking believe I'm a part of this ride.
I saw that game live too. Like I watched that play on TV and being like, no way there's no flag. No way there's no flag. And
Oh yeah.
it was, I mean, one of those moments of sports that I remember so vividly because I could not believe what I just saw. And like, I could not believe it, you
Oh
know?
yeah. It's like, where in the world were you when the kick six happened? You know, it's
Right.
people remember. I actually I have these on my desk, but this is the SEC championship ring from that year,
That's unreal, dude. Look at that.
and we lost in the national championship to Florida State. So,
Yeah.
but it was
But
a
still, man,
great
that
season.
moment, I mean, that went down. And Iron Bowls, I feel like in general, no matter the records, I mean, there's years of a beatdown, sure, but for the most part, it's a highly competitive game. And I mean, I even watched a special, and I forget like one team, I think, or someone from one poisoned the tree of like the other, and
Harvey
like,
Updike.
yeah, like I was like, Jesus, like that's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, college football down there is religion. It is, I mean, families break up after the Iron Bowl every year. Like, it is a house divided. It was such a cool experience, especially being a kid from the Northeast that didn't really have a college team before
Right.
going to college. Like, I always pulled for BC, but like
Yeah.
I more so was rooting for like Texas because my cousin went there. And once I like now, I would say I'm an even bigger Auburn fan than I am any New England sports fan, just because I played for the program and I'm so
Right.
invested in
You
their
get it
success.
now. It's funny, even friends who just go as students, not even athletes, how hard they root for their teams like years later. Like
Oh yeah.
anytime UConn's on TV, the amount of people that you figure out went to the University of Connecticut just by them wearing jerseys or going out and you're like, oh, you went to UConn. Oh, you went to UConn. Like, so I get it. And up here we don't appreciate college football as much. Like being a coach, I love college football because I stole so much stuff from it. Like when you watch it, you're like, oh, I want to change this or run this formation or
Oh
try
yeah.
this blitz. And so you watch it, you're a fan of it in that sense. But yeah, it's around here. We're so spoiled with four professional teams or four major sports, and we have a professional team for all of them. But down south, some of those areas, college football is it. It's and yeah, it's something that I definitely want to experience an Iron Bowl before I die. That is something that is on my bucket list of
Have
games to
to.
go to, which is fun. But now for you, obviously, we're talking about your playing career and so on. But the other reason you're on here too is kind of music, and I know that music and sports just they tangle together so well. I mean, was country music kind of what you listened to personally a little bit, like warming up and getting juiced up? Or what type of music were you listening to before a game? Maybe not necessarily what was on the locker room, but maybe what you would have on as you're kind of get yourself mentally prepared.
Yeah. I mean, I used to listen to everything. I am a human jukebox. Like, I have influences from every single genre. Like, when I grew up, I used to love like more of the rock stuff, folks, like Three Doors Down, Nickelback. I'm not afraid to admit it, you know. Good Charlotte, I used to listen to back in the day. Like, I was super into that. And then I was also heavy into like the Eminem tracks and like
Right.
Lil Wayne and all those pump up musics and country. It wasn't until I went to Gillette Stadium to see my first ever country concert. It was Brad Paisley was playing and Jason Aldean years
Okay.
and years ago. And I was like, what is this? Like, I fell in love with it. And then obviously I went down south and it was all I listened to and all
Yeah.
I got into for a few years there. So yeah, country was actually a later influence compared to other genres, but it was the one that I fell in love with the most.
Yeah, so did you have a career in music at all? Like obviously country was something later on, but did you know how to play guitar when you were younger, things like that? Or
So I actually learned guitar a little, like a few months. I bought my first guitar a few months before COVID happened.
wow.
Um,
Talk about a perfect time to have a guitar and practicing
Literally, I was
it.
locked inside my house, and I'll never forget. I was like, COVID happened. The first couple weeks, I was playing so much video games, and I was bored out of my mind. And I'm like, this is intolerable. Like, I'm not making any progress on anything in my life. I'm just literally going on Xbox every night. I unplugged it, threw it in a closet, and just started learning guitar. it has never left my closet. Like,
Wow.
it's literally still in my closet, my Xbox. I just have continued to play guitar. But I did have a music background. So I grew up doing musical theater at Tyngsboro High.
Okay.
So I did middle school shows, high school shows, and then when I went to Auburn, I did an a cappella group for the first couple years before I walked on. And I even did this Auburn Big Man on Campus thing that they did.
Yeah.
And I won it for Auburn's best talent was my singing. So
Wow. What you sing?
I went back to my musical theater days and I sang Empty Chairs and Empty Tables from Les Miserables.
Wow,
And
dude.
yeah, it was awesome. It was in the old basketball arena. And honestly, it was probably the most people I've ever sang in front of in my life. It was probably a few thousand people at least. It was all sorority girls and guys because it was a huge philanthropy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun. I was one of 17 guys. I ended up winning the Mr. Auburn crown. It was pretty funny.
Hey, listen, that's no joke. You can throw that on your belt. Mr. Auburn's a big deal.
It was technically big man on campus, but yeah, no, it was pretty funny. And then I emceed the event the next year.
Oh,
And
really?
my buddy CJ, who I was talking about earlier, actually participated the following year, but he didn't win. So I always have that leg up
Always
on
got
him.
the one up on him. You always got the one up on him.
100%.
Now, so you just recently picked this up. This wasn't something that you were kind of doing for life. So when did you kind of maybe take that leap or take that step, right? Like when did you say, okay, I'm practice at this, I'm passionate about it, I really want to make a move with this. So what was kind of maybe some of those steps? I'm so interested because I would have guessed that you were into music for specifically country and playing it for a long time. So to hear it's almost less than 5 years or about 5 years. It's really interesting, yeah.
Yeah. So it was everything kind of happened in baby steps. It was like a little momentum, and it just kind of snowballed. So it was, started learning guitar and got to the point where I didn't have to look at my fingers the entire time while playing.
Yeah,
And then I started learning how to sing while playing. And then I started saying, like, oh, I'd really love to try and write something. So I just took the four basic chords that I knew and I started writing my first ever song. And my first song I wrote was actually a song called Long Shot. It was about being in a long distance relationship with my wife throughout college.
yeah,
And the words kind of just came to me. Like I started writing it and it was kind of flowing and I've have such a musical background that I don't even know how it happened, but it
it
did
happened.
happen. And I ended up posting it on my Instagram and I was just like, "Hey guys, don't know if this is going to be the first and last one, but I wrote a song and I played it. I got an incredible response to it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
friends and family were so supportive and it kind of gave me the bug like I want to feel that again. I want to write another song. And so then I just started writing. Like I stopped learning covers and I started writing my own stuff. And then I had opportunities just from kind of starting to play on social media. Local bar owners were like, "Hey, if you'd ever want to come and do a short set or open for this band, like we'd love to have you. Like bring your family out. It's a win-win, right? Like I,
yeah,
I can bring people and they don't have to pay me." I was like, just kind of go and do it. And I started doing that at this bar called The Boat in Tyngsboro. And I kept opening for bands and kept playing and built a little bit more confidence. And then sooner or later, like fast forward 3, 4 years later, I had 3 or 4 hours of music I could do, and I bought all my own sound system, and now I
wow.
gig every weekend.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing when you start chasing it and just like the process of where you were and where you're at a little bit.
Yeah.
We just had a buddy on, he's kind of a different guest, but he wrote his first ever comic book and he's a good friend of mine. He's been talking about it forever, as long as
No
I've known
way.
him. He's super into, Marvel comics. Sees every movie, he's read every comic for it. And he wrote, he finally went ahead and it took him, maybe a year plus in the process of doing it, but just published it and put it out there. So to me, that whole process in itself is just an amazing thing because this obviously isn't your full-time thing. And when you're working on that process and doing that stuff, there's not a lot of hours in the day that you do have free or available, and whatever it is I'm guessing you spend doing all that, right? And so for you, it's the grind, it's the hustle to kind of get where you're at. So you're putting out new music. I know we kind of chatted a little bit before here, and you're kind of in the process of putting out new music. Process of writing music in general. Obviously, you've written songs before and you've done that. But when you kind of take a break and go back to the drawing board a little bit, as an artist, are you kind of like looking at what you've done and saying, okay, I want to try to maybe spread the wings and try this genre a little bit? Or are you looking just to kind of like double down on the first album? I mean, when you kind of go into that process, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, I definitely am at that point where I'm still trying to write on different themes. Like I'm trying not to have all my songs be about the same thing or kind of sound the same way. So I'm really experimentative right now, trying to find what really is my sound and what do I like the most with regards to like my style.
Mhm.
And I have so many different influences, right? So like it's would be easy for me just to keep writing country songs, but like I love pop music, I
Right.
love indie music, I love rock music. So what I've been writing recently, it's definitely still country genre. Like I think it would all fall, and country is just very wide in general now,
Yeah.
but it's a much different sound than your typical country music. Like I have one song that I just wrote called Bring the Truth that's like really rocking, like
Yeah.
really, really fun, kind of like bring the fight type of song. I wrote this other song called geez, Hey Lady, which is like a song about uh being an alcohol addict and going in and checking yourself into rehab. And I've had a lot of friends that have struggled with that, and I wanted to write about that. It was just something it's been prevalent enough in my life. It was just a theme that I wanted to write to, and
Yeah.
writing a new song now called like Luckiest Man on the Lake. And I live on a small lake in Tyngsboro, and I'm kind of writing about the fun of living on a lake with my wife. And just kinda pulling from inspiration wherever I can and definitely trying different things out because I don't really know what folks wanna hear from me yet, so the more I can give them, the more I'll probably kinda understand what they like from me.
What if there was an artist you could collaborate with, right now, present, past, whatever, is there someone that you would love to write a song with, sing a song with, or whoever?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
A lot, I'm sure, right?
There's a lot of people I would love to write a song with. I'm a huge Luke Combs fan, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie, and I just feel like him and I would totally hit it off. We're both dads, we both very much the stuff he's been writing recently is just so personal to him. Like I would love to write a song that he cut someday. Like that would be an absolute dream. And as much as I want to be an artist myself, I do feel like if I could be a songwriter first and have other people cut it just like what Sam Hunt did with
Right.
like Cop Car for Keith Urban, like that is definitely where I would love to land first. And then if things picked up in my own artistry, that would be great.
Right. That's great. Yeah, I mean, there's something about that. I mean, even writing music that people are playing, like I'd always think like, man, writing your song and singing it'd be one thing, but writing a song and hearing like someone monstrous sing it is, I mean, that's got to be a thrill in a way, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I have there's a few friends of mine from Nashville that are songwriters and they've had cuts and it's pretty cool like seeing them. It's very lucrative.
Yeah.
Although I don't think anyone gets into this for the money. It's like that's the cherry on top, I guess, is if something does take off, but um it's it's just the best way to get the most exposure to the song, you know? It's like I could have the greatest song in the world. My audience is pretty small. Like, if I can get someone else that's really big with a huge audience to sing it, now that's gonna get more ears, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and obviously, as you're doing this and kind of navigating through this life, I mean, you mentioned it, but you're a new dad, and I know from coaching and doing a lot of different things, when you are going through life, everything is so important, and the littlest things that at the time we think are such big deals until you have a kid, and Then you kind of prioritize and realize a little bit what is really meaningful and what is it and what you want to put your time into and what you don't. Being a dad, do you feel like that's changed you all in this process as far as pushing this and pursuing this and even just even a bigger motivation for you more than ever?
A ton.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, Anthony, like, so I'll give you a little bit background. My wife and I were high school sweethearts.
Yeah.
We've been together for 15 years. We've been wanting a baby for a while. We really struggled with having one. We had to go through the IVF process.
Hmm.
So having Montana here now is like it literally has been the happiest 4 months of my entire life. Like
Yeah.
we're tired, sure. We don't care. We just love being parents. I love being a dad. And there was a piece of me, and I kind of feel guilty even saying it out loud, where as we were getting towards the finish line of her coming here, I was like, oh, I'm like really trying to do things in music right now. And I'm making a lot of progress. And is this going to be something that holds me back? Or am I going to feel like I can't do what I wanted to do before with this regard? It's been the exact opposite.
Hmm.
Like, I feel it's so important for me to pursue my how can I tell her to pursue her dreams if I don't do it for myself?
Right.
So I've had to be a lot more cognizant of how I'm spending my evenings and how I'm spending my time and being very intentional with it, but I appreciate the focus because I think it's made me a better writer. It's made me definitely a better person. Just not having to think about myself as much, thinking about her more has
Right.
made me a better person, and, I'm loving it. I really am. It's been great, and I know you're a dad, so
Yeah, I mean, when I started this podcast, the one thing I said to myself was like, I'm all in on this in the sense of like my life and putting it out there. Like I love being a dad. I went through IVF as well. So I have
oh,
twins.
wow.
Because we went through a very similar process. I went through a very similar process and last try and the being the lucky twins, So
Wow.
I hear you say that and I totally get it. I appreciate being a dad so much to the point that I probably overdo it sometimes on social media with it, but I think when you go through that process, not many people understand the ups and downs, and we're the guys talking about it, right? But like for the women, it's even more so a whole different mental game for them. So to kind of hear you say that, I understand the appreciation and the focus and the motivation when it comes to that because for a while you're not sure if that's going to be a part of your life, right? So
Yeah.
it's great when that moment comes, and I'll never forget it. So I know exactly what you're talking about for sure.
Dang, I got chills, Anthony. That's like that is so freaking cool, a and the
Yeah,
fact that you had twins, like that
yeah,
wow, what a blessing, like, that is so freaking cool,
yeah. So I
and
get it.
honestly, I know what you mean by, like, maybe I'd overdo it,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think you can. I don't think you
yeah,
can. I looking at Montana, I am scared for her as to how annoying I might be later in her life cheering her on. Like
yeah,
she, and especially knowing what you went through similarly to my experience, you know,
yeah.
be loud, be proud.
Yeah, I mean, it's it, and I think when I'm building this, I think the difficult thing is that this is a niche thing. Like high school sports or college sports is niche, right? So I think when you do anything, I think the most relatable people are the people that kind of put it out there. And I think some people can be annoying doing that. I think there's levels of it, but I think when it comes to you or myself in the sense of putting out a product that really highlights high school athletes and how hard they work and coaches and programs and doing that, you're trying to make something look great and you're trying to put a lot into what you're doing. And I think it's true of like I'm kind of losing my train of thought here, but the point I'm just trying to make is that like we just appreciate it, and I think for
Absolutely.
me, you're right. Like I'm never gonna stop kind of doing that because I'm trying to show off like who I am as a person, and they're a very big part of who I am. So I think when people see that I teach or do something else, and then they see that I'm equally devoted to being a dad, it shows you spending your time wisely, or like you said, spending time on things that actually matter.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just when I talk about being a dad, sometimes I just like go, but like,
No,
um,
I love it. I love it.
yeah, yeah. But I think it's important, and I think for me with this, it keeps me focused. Like I mentioned for you, it's more of a motivation or a lock-in ever for you. So you're writing new music right now. You kind of have that going. When you get through that process, you kind of put some tracks together. You put an album together. What's your next step as far as like? And I won't even ask you this. I'm going to rewind even further. What's it like when you wrote music or you've written music and you hear it like on Spotify or you hear it like listening to it in the car? I mean, that must be like cool. And your name's there, you name your song, it's you, like,
Oh yeah. No, it's so hype. Like every time I get someone that shoots me a text of them driving and it's on their dash and it's like Ben Durand, beer league, or like Ben Durand, waiting on you, Ben Durand, bridges I burn.
yeah.
I get so hyped. Or folks that are out by a fire and they're just sending a video of like the mood and it's my song playing in the background with like a bunch of people hanging out by the fire. I'm like, that is so freaking hype. Um,
Yeah.
I was on a wedding bus for my buddy Cody Graham who got married last year, and I'm close with all these guys, like they're family, and but we were on the bus and there was like 18 of us, and they put my song on this limo bus that we got. Every single person was singing every word to every song, and I was like, this is so cool, like to have
Yeah.
something that, and they genuinely like it, like I know they love me, I'm their family, they'll support me, but you can tell like if they didn't know the song, they wouldn't be
I
singing
mean,
along.
they know the lyrics, dude. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
like, when you have a bus loaded people and they're singing, I mean, that's especially at a wedding where everyone's having a little bit to drink too and so
Oh
on. I mean,
yeah.
that's pretty impressive, dude. It's pretty impressive.
No, it was hype. It was hype. But I mean, with regards to your other question of like, how do you get to the point of like, what do you do after you have a
Yeah,
song?
yeah, yeah.
I'm still figuring that out, man.
Yeah.
I'm working on an EP right now, so I have two songs finished.
Okay.
I have a third one that I'm going to record on Saturday down in Rhode Island, and then I have four. I actually I wrote 8 songs since Montana has been born, so I have a ton of songs that I've written that I'm just trying to choose which ones are like my favorites to really do like a 4 or 5 song EP with. But then having the songs done is just the first part of it. Then you got to
Right.
market it, you got to create videos for them, you got to figure out how you're going to distribute them. It's a lot. I need an intern or like a manager or something because
Yeah.
it's a lot, but I'm
I
figuring it
hear
out.
you. Just having like an extra set of hands to like look at a schedule, write things down. Like I have a kid who's helped me out in my classroom now. He was like the first day of school today, and it's like some company that comes in, whatever that works. And this kid was like working like a dog. I was like, man, I need this kid like all the time. Like he helped me just do so many small things that just save
Oh
me
yeah.
so much time. So I get what you mean, dude. Like just having like an assistant to keep things in line for you, you know?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
even
I got
just
this, I got
someone to
that.
like check me, like, hey, is
Yeah.
this cringe? Is this okay? Like, it's a fine balance, it's I'm still figuring it out. I'm definitely still
Now,
figuring.
did you have a like I only had a few friends that I said this to when I first started this podcast. I said, and you've kind of alluded to this a lot with your friends and family, that they're going to support you no matter what. They're going to support you, they love you, that no matter what. But I said to this certain people, I said, if I'm terrible at this, you listen to it and you're just like, oh my God, Anthony, this is so bad. But I like love it, and you don't want to say, like, I want you to say it to me. I want you to say, you're terrible. Stop doing this. This is cringe. Yeah, like I mean I had those people. Did you feel like when you started early on, because it's one thing writing, one thing doing it on your own, but I'm sure when you started putting it out there or singing at places or letting people know that this is what you were doing, yeah, I'm sure it's not easy to go out there and let people see you do something you're vulnerable with the first time ever in your life.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
for sure. And I'll wrap myself out on something that I didn't realize I was doing so much in the beginning was when you're trying to find your own voice or when you're trying to figure out your sound, it's very easy to kind of just copy what you know or to copy what you hear. So I found myself, I'd sing a cover of a song and I would be like singing it like the person who sings it. And so I was adding like this twang onto my voice that I don't really have. And like, it took me a while to really figure out my sound with all of my covers of like I want to sound like Ben Durand singing the song, not Ben Durand trying to sound like Chris Young. You
Right,
know, like
right.
there's a difference, and that's the artistry, right? Like as you become more of an artist, you become your own sound. So in the beginning, like the first couple years, or at least the first like year, when I realized I was doing it, I was like, hey, I need you guys keeping me honest when I'm doing this, because that's just embarrassing to hear it played back.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's gone away. You know, for the most part, it's completely gone away. But yeah, my brother keeps it pretty honest with me too. Like if he hears a song, he's like, dude, that one sucked. Like
Yeah.
keep that one out of the next set, you know? But he's also like my most supportive guy, you know? So
Yeah, and I think you need that. Like, I have a couple friends that are the same way. They'll show up to everything. They'll be a part of everything. But like when they tell me stuff, they're like, "Oh, I'm like, yeah, tell me." Like, if I'm not asking, if I'm telling you to tell me, like,
yeah.
you tell me, you know, like. So I always look at that and struggle a little bit. Like, and you mentioned writing songs, and you've written a lot more since your daughter was born. I think you said 8. I mean, when you start thinking of a topic to write about or
Mhm.
like a theme of a song, I mean, you kind of alluded to it early on in the podcast, but when you're now, do you feel like you're more thinking as a dad writing, or do you think, does your daughter come to mind with a lot of these songs? Are you feeling like you're changing a style a little bit with that, or is you kind of just still random music?
Honestly, I am just constantly in absorb mode with my
Yeah,
surroundings. Like anyone could say anything at any given moment that is all of a sudden the idea for the song or the song lyric. It's
yeah,
really strange. Like I just find myself constantly looking and waiting for like profound things to happen around me where I'm like, oh, that's a lyric or that's a song idea that I never thought of. And like even if I go through my phone, I have this text thread that's like literally miles long that I've been texting myself for years
yeah,
just of song ideas. So like I had I mean I someone just on Saturday I wrote down, and this was actually I was about being a parent. It's job your job is to understand who I am, not know who I am.
yeah,
Like as a parent, like it's our job to understand who they are, not necessarily try and make them be like us or like no like have a firm thought around it. And I also wrote that to myself at midnight. So I was drinking whiskey with my boys.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, just constantly like writing things down from what I hear from people.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that you're probably up with the every 3 hours, I'm sure, of bottles and feeding and everything else. It's exhausting early on, dude.
I gotta give a shout out to my wife, because I returned to work earlier than she did.
Yeah.
So I've been able to sleep at night, and she's staying up with the babe because she's still on mat leave until October 1st.
Oh, nice.
But
Oh, wow.
my understanding is come October 1st, her and I are gonna go back to the switching off in the night and kind of
Yeah.
rolling over. So
You'll get used to it. I'm sure there's the hours you put into this that you're up thinking of things or writing things down, like you mentioned. And I know with this podcast, like sometimes the weirdest ideas or the best ideas that I have come when it's like dead silent in this house and everyone's sleeping. And all of a sudden you're up late and you're struggling and you're watching an old Sopranos episode or and something just clicks in your head and I
yeah,
like slide out of bed and like go downstairs and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like look at this for a little bit. And because if I don't, then tomorrow I'll either forget about it or I just like won't be as motivated to like kind of jump into what I'm doing. So sometimes the best thinking I've done is yeah, kind of when you're up in the middle of the night and you're doing those things and some like you said, something just pops and comes to you. Um for you now, we obviously kind of talked about you got no music, all that happening for you. My question to you is, and I relate this to a lot of coaches and athletes that we come on, so I'll kind of switch gears to you a little bit. What is your advice to people out there that, because I mentioned to you that we had somebody on here earlier in the week, a friend of mine that wrote his own comic book, and it was something that he just decided to do, always had a passion for it, and went for it. And as I hear your story, I mean, it starts with football, with walking on and grinding and working hard and earning your spot, and then picking up a guitar and saying, okay, no more video games here, and then all of a sudden here you are and we're having a conversation, right? So you kind of always had that drive, you've kind of always had that self motivation, and that, I'm sure, you learned that in sports at a young age, and you've taken that with you. What's your advice to young musicians out there or young athletes out there just in general, when you want something and you're passionate enough about it, just going after it and going for it?
Yeah, I mean, in life, this isn't a test drive. Like, we only get one shot at this. And that is becoming more and more apparent to me the older I get.
Mhm.
And I already have instances of, ooh, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have thrown myself into that more. And by having that past experience, I just I can't let it happen again. Like I now live a little bit frantically. Like I don't know how much time I have. I don't know what is coming tomorrow. I need to make the most out of what I have right now. And I think too many of us have this sense of, oh, I can get to that, or there's plenty of time for that. And then it's all of a sudden you look up
Right.
and years have passed and you've made no progress towards it. And you're now at a different stage. There's different responsibilities, there's different things that are hanging over your head. And it was like you did have the chance, and what did you do with that time? And I spent a lot of time thinking about that, Anthony. Like it haunts me. Even going back to college athletics, I set the bar at walking on to the Auburn Tigers. I think I set the bar too low. I should have set the bar to make the NFL. And I guarantee you I would have been a better college quarterback. It's
Yeah.
just if you speak it into existence and you also chase after it with intent and purpose, what you can achieve versus what you end up achieving, I think can be drastically different. And I'm just seeing that in music right now. I'm a little bit in limbo right now. Are you going to make the jump and just go after this, or are you going to
Yeah.
continue to play and be safe in both regards? And I don't know how much longer I can play it safe. So I am pouring myself into this every hour, every minute I have that's not, being a dad and working my full-time job. I'm doing music. I'm doing the late nights. I'm waking up in the morning. I'm grabbing my coffee. I'm grabbing my guitar. Like this is my dream. I'm chasing it. And I just urge anyone else that has something that keeps them up at night or something that they've been wanting to do, don't push it off because tomorrow's not guaranteed and you'll be glad you did. I've never had a moment where I regret playing guitar or holding my baby or any of that. So, um, sorry, I went on a little bit of a rant, but I'm
No,
very
dude,
passionate
I think
about it.
that I'm like listening to you. I'm like, damn, damn. Like, and I think it's so, I mean, when I hear you talk, it makes me think similar to me with this, right? Like, there's moments of this that we are like on the gas pedal going and we are like nonstop. And I'm like, man, if I just had more time to do this and I just had more energy to put towards this, I probably could make it something. But then there's that fear of like, what if I don't? Then I'm leaving a job with a pension and great insurance and
Mm.
all this stuff to really now go put my chips all in on the table. So I hear you, and I sympathize for you because I do struggle with that so much. Like I really do. And I think, man, if I really think I can do it, why not do it, right? Like manifest it into place. But just because, yeah, I get it. Like I'm a huge manifester. Like I believe it. I say it out loud, and people think I'm crazy when I think things, and
Yeah.
when they happen, it's not like I told you so. It's just like, to me, it's like the wheels just keep going. Like I don't have time to turn around and be smug. Like this is what I knew what was happening. So I'm just good. People didn't care. I didn't believe in it. Fine, and keep going. Like, so I
Yeah.
hear you say that, man. It's just like super relatable. It really is.
100%. And honestly, I've surrounded myself with dogs that just are so hungry in their own directions, and it fuels us because we all understand. Like, we all get the grind. We love
Mhm.
seeing each other, but we also know that we can't see each other all the time, and
Yeah.
we're super supportive of each other's stuff that's going on, and, it's, I'm just so freaking glad I did this. Like,
Mhm.
the people I've had the opportunity to meet, like yourself, like, I would have never had this if I didn't throw myself into this as much as I have over the last, 5 years. I wish I started 5 years earlier. Like,
Right.
I limited my belief of I'm only gonna be a singer. I can't learn an instrument. I'm too old to learn an instrument, or I don't have I didn't learn it when I was younger. It's gonna be too hard now. Like,
Yeah.
it's just crap excuses that we fill our heads with, and it's like anything that we would have started then would have been tough too, but we were just more resilient.
Right. Yeah, I mean, granted, maybe our brains are filled with less things than they are now, but you're so right. I've said that to myself so many times on things, being like, I'm too old for this. There's no way I'm ever going to have time to learn this or do this. But you can, like, you really can if you really want to, and
Right.
I think that people think that that sounds silly or that's too like cliche, but it really, like, with this, if you had asked me 4 years ago, a person who didn't have Instagram or a person who didn't have Facebook, or a person that couldn't even log on to a Spotify was going to have a podcast that now covers high school sports across the state at a pretty good rate, I would have laughed and been like, no way. Like,
Yeah.
I barely can like log on to like accounts on things. Like,
Right.
if you believe it and you say, okay, I got to get to this point. Okay, now I got to get to this point. Okay, now I got to learn how to do this. Now I got to, okay, maybe help somebody find me do this next part or whatever. But it's like you said, it's surrounding yourself with dogs too, or like, because you don't want to be the person in the pack that's like not holding your weight where everybody else is hustling for stuff and believing in stuff and building a little dynasty for themselves. So
Oh,
I
for
agree
sure.
with you. Like, your three best friends are like who you are, and I think that on so many levels, of personality to work ethic to just who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very passionate about it. I've never been anyone that thinks anything has come easy to me just has no idea how much time I've spent doing it. Like,
Right.
it's so easy to look at someone and be like, "Oh, it must be nice," or like it's like it came easy to them. Like, I've was never a great student. I had to work hard for my B's, like
Right.
I had to work really hard for my B's, and um even getting into the weight room, like, it's pretty embarrassing when you're the lifting the least out of anyone on the team, and you can't even do a pull-up, and you have to have the supported straps to do pull-ups and stuff. And, well, you know what, you get stronger and you
Right.
build on it. It's just not letting that initial starting point being the detractor from never doing it in the first place, I think, is what I would tell any high school kid that wants to do football, or wants to, pursue something. Like, don't let the mountain in front of you scare you, because it all starts one step at a time. And the first step is the hardest step, is
Yeah.
literally, and once you start doing that, there's going to be some momentum. So, yeah, sorry, I could talk about all
No,
that.
dude, I love it. Do you feel like, and I'm only asking you this more just off of like me personally, do you feel like sometimes you have like haters out there a little bit? You feel like you have people who sometimes are like, and how do you, and if so, how do you deal with that? Because I definitely get that with this a lot. And I'm sure when people don't get when you're pursuing a passion or something that you love and something that you enjoy, you're so focused on that like what other people's opinions don't necessarily matter, but you hear it. I mean, you don't not hear it. But how do you deal with criticism? You deal with people like not being a fan of what you're doing. If you have it, Alan, maybe you don't.
No, no, I definitely do.
Yeah,
I would say I choose to focus on the people that have had my back.
yeah,
It's life is about perspective, I think, right? Glass half full, glass half empty type of perspective.
yeah,
And, if I really take a moment to reflect on all the people that have came out to a show this year, or that have shared a post that I've done, or liked a video, or that is overwhelmingly more positive and has made a bigger impact on me than having however many haters I have. And I feel like the haters I don't even see it so much on my videos or in my face because I think that there's so
Right.
much of that love and that good support system that's there that if it did happen, they'd be very quick to be like, "Get
Right.
out of here. Like,
Who,
who are
yeah,
you?"
who are
You know?
you? Right,
I'm
right.
sure it happens behind closed doors. And what I would say to them really is if you have a problem with me and I don't have your number in my phone,
Yeah.
then we really probably shouldn't have a problem with one another because you obviously don't know me.
Right.
And if
Right.
we had the opportunity to get to know each other, and if you could know the amount of time and energy I'm putting into this, whether you think I'm good at it or not, doesn't matter. You would have respect for the grind that I'm doing.
Yeah. And it's
You know?
hard, and I ask you that because I think that's true of any facet of life. But with this, I feel like I kind of get that too. And I think when you're working so hard, a lot of times it's easy to ignore, but sometimes it gets you a little bit. Like sometimes the little things get to me, and I'm just like why am I letting this bother me? But I think when you work hard and you pursue something, sometimes it just takes one little thing or seeing one thing on a bad day or an off moment or not being yourself that just sets you into a place. I was just trying to look this up actually on Instagram, and I'm not a huge fan of Aaron Rodgers. I think he's kind of like out of his mind a little bit, but he had a really good quote, and it talked about criticism. Just looking at it, he goes, "If you would never ask somebody for advice, then why are you letting their opinion matter in your life?" Right. And
Great
I
quote.
kind of watched it like 3 or 4 times. And he said it, and he goes, somebody told me when I was 38 years old. He goes, a couple years ago. And he's like, that I wish I knew when I was 15. Was that like, if I'm never gonna ask somebody for advice and what I think I should do with something, then why do I care what they think? Right. And I was like, man, and I reshared it. I put it on my story
I
because I
saw
just
that
thought it
on your
was great.
story. That
Yeah.
was fire. I love that quote. You know, you really like kickstarted a thought with me.
Yeah.
Um, because I think what's harder than dealing with a hater is dealing with comparison.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many people doing what I'm doing right now. There's so many people that are doing what you're doing, and it's easy to compare and to be like, "Oh, well, oh, they got, this type of following or they're getting this much exposure to their show or whatnot." And it's really easy to kinda get into this trap of, like, kinda needing to prove yourself over them or validate
Yeah.
what you're doing versus what they are. And I've had to catch myself on multiple occasions. Like, I'm not a perfect person, like, I'm a
Yeah.
human, I'm competitive, I come from a sports background. But
Right.
what I have really refrained on, or what's really gone back in my mind, is like appreciating the investment that they're doing with their time and their energy and just being like, good for them.
Yeah.
And I feel like the
Right.
more of that karma that we put out, the more it's going to pour back in. But I actually think more than the haters, it's your own inside demon that's
Mm.
you're battling with, of like the comparison game. And
Yeah.
it's just easy to do. And I think the more I've been able to shut that guy up and just put blinders on and focus on me and celebrate everyone around me's wins, the better that has made my entire situation and my relationship with anyone else doing the same thing. And
Yeah.
um, I think that's been like a huge area for growth because it's easy to compare and be competitive.
Yeah. And I think, I'm a teacher, and the one thing that like I kind of implement in my class, and I have a couple people that, like with me today, I shadowed a little bit, and I was like, classroom, and I'm sure this is true of a football program as soon as I say this, but it's like classroom culture. Like if you want your learning environment to be a certain type of way, then you got to create that, right? Like if you want your football program to be a certain type of way, you got to create that in the off season. You got to create that in
Mhm.
the weight room. You got to create that in film. You got to create that in spring. Like it's the same thing in your classroom. Like so many teachers sometimes I think worry about how their room looks or worry about getting through every inch of curriculum. And I'm not saying either of those things are wrong, but I think you can do that stuff even better if the classroom culture is is spot on. And your classroom culture is kids get along with each other and it's a safe environment to come into and they feel like they can raise their hand even if they're wrong to take a chance to get something or be vulnerable maybe where they weren't before. And I think I don't start totally seeing that in my classroom till like December, January, because I think it takes a while to get your really shy kids there. I think
Sure.
they have to see it a million times before they try it once,
Yep.
and but once that happens, you can soar, you can take off. And I think you kind of like hitting what you're saying, like when you do that, I think like yourself, when you do anything that's different, when you are creating something that's different than people around you or people in your life, people are always going to look at that and always go back to the status quo of what that is. And this is too much. You can't do this. You can't do that. They question this. They question that. And it's kind of what you said. You get in your own head a little bit about it to the point of like, but why do I care what these people think? Like they put zero effort into this. They put zero thought into this. They've helped me do nothing with this. Why do I care? Why do
You
I
know, I don't I gotta find the clip. I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna send it to you because
care?
I
Okay.
just recently saw it was one of those motivational speakers. I think her name was Mel, and she was talking about how her husband had quit drinking and how she was continuing to drink. And it was a few days later, they were sitting down at dinner, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you have a glass of wine with me?" And he's like, "No, I don't want to have a glass of wine." She's like, "Well, come on. It's just a glass of wine. Like, why won't you just have a glass of wine with me? Like, it's not gonna ruin your streak or anything." And he goes, "Why is this an issue for you? Why are you caring about what's in my wine more than what's or in my glass more than your own?"
That's right.
And what she had said is it has to do with when people are judging you, it's actually them confronting something about themselves.
No.
And to me, that was like, I was like, holy smokes. It's
Right.
not what you're doing that's bothering them. It's them having to now confront that with themselves of why they aren't doing it or what they're putting off that they should be doing or whatnot. And that just was totally it was like the
Yeah.
Uno reverse card. I was just like, dang. I was like, that is profound. I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and I think, when you have these types of conversations, I mean, when like yourself and myself included, I think when you're pursuing something that you're passionate about, and sometimes things that you're passionate about, other people just don't understand or don't totally get. Um, you know, it comes like we said, it draws critics, but at the end of the day, I think it's better that we recognize and see that that comes with the territory,
Mhm.
and how we deal with that is so important early on because the more you grow in that area, the more that's just going to continue to happen at a bigger
Absolutely.
rate or whatever. And unfortunately, yeah, we live in a world of like how we respond to things or how we react to things can be so quickly like scrutinized and changed and misread or misinformed or whatever. So, yeah, it's a question I like to ask the people when they're really doing something that's passionate for themselves that goes beyond maybe the norm of life because yeah, I think sometimes people are just maybe upset that they're not in a position to put themselves into something that they love and care about so much and be in a position that yourself might be in or myself might be in for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff's all interesting. It's all a
No,
head
for
study.
sure.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on here today. I know that you have a super busy schedule. Obviously being a new dad, that schedule is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's the busiest schedule you have. But it's awesome to obviously hear your story. I think to me, what I kind of doing my homework on you, just walking onto a football program really made me eager to contact you because I think that alone probably speaks volumes of exactly who you are as a person, like and what you're pursuing right now and how you're doing that. And I think you're on the right path, man. You're motivated more than ever. I think when I had my kids, like things in my life completely changed because
Mhm.
I just realized that things were bigger than me and that if I was going to pursue something, I guess on a selfish level, I better be 1,000% in and working on it whenever I can. And that's exactly what it seems like you're doing. And Pretty inspiring. I mean, if I'm being honest with you, pretty inspiring talking to you today. And, we wish you the best of luck, man. Any music that, you drop, we would love to share on our page or
Thank
have
you.
you on here again once you kind of taking your next big step and, continue to follow you, man. I know it's a different genre per se, but for us, the athletic background and obviously pursuing a dream and who you are and what you want. I'll tell stories about that and have people to come in here and talk about that all day. So, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your story, and I know my audience is going to love this. I think this is going to be a really good one. So I
Thank
appreciate you a
you.
lot. So thank you.
No, thank you, Anthony. Honestly, I'm so grateful for our convo tonight. This has just been, I feel like we've known each other for years. It was
I
just
know. I know.
really, really awesome talking to you. I can't wait to meet you in person because you just seem like an
Yeah.
awesome guy. And yeah, really, really appreciate you having me on and looking forward to coming on another time.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, we'll have to get you down to the chini eating contest. That's what we'll have to draw you down there. I mean, I made it a
100%.
goal every year. So Joe's like I would lay in traffic for Joe if he asked me to. Like when we started this podcast, he was like the first business. Like we reached out to a few different businesses to kind of attach on with them a little bit of what we were doing. And he was the first person that agreed to meet with us. And he was kind of up and coming too. Like he was fairly new with what he was doing right outside the garden, and it just like worked. Like we just clicked, we just worked,
It's
and
awesome.
we've been ever since doing contests together, giveaways together, going down there doing content for them, making videos. But that Chini contest, I go down there. I think I've been in 4 out of 5 of them, since I've known him really. And every year we've done better. So this year was, I set a goal and I said, man, I'm not walking out of there unless I place in the medals, and I did second, and I almost shocked the world, but we'll have to
Love it.
have you come down and participate. It's fun. So as Joe says, it is the premier eating competition in Massachusetts. So
Love it. Bring me down. I'm
yeah,
there.
yeah. And then you can sing a winning song after you win.
Oh,
You write a song on the spot.
burp a winning song.
Well, I took down 10. I'll be honest with you. I was hoping 7 or 8. That was kind of the goal. And so you're a bigger guy, college athlete. They put you on a fitness plan, a meal plan before. So I think if you train, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. But all right, guys. Well, listen, I'm your host, Anthony Pacholis. This is Beyond Podcast. Our fall season, we're going to be at Shawshing Tech opening night, almost said January 6th, September 6th. So we're super excited about kicking off with one of the best teams in the state right now with our football coverage. And we have a ton of other schools. We're super excited. And we'll talk to you guys soon. So I'm your host, Anthony Petralis, Ben Durand. Till next time.